Okay, everyone. We are coming up here on 2 o'clock on the West Coast. It is, as my clock said, 13:59, and so we're recording this. And so, welcome to another YouTube Live. It's been a couple weeks. Been a busy couple of weeks. We have conducted two really great trainings here in Las Vegas. The first was a HUNA Level One training over 2 weekends, which was a virtual. And in-person training. We call it a hybrid, and that was a bunch of students from all over the world. We had people from Europe, people from all over the country, and people here in Las Vegas that attended this HUNA Level 1 training. And many of you know that I teach HUNA, and which is the Hawaiian shamanistic arts of healing. And so you can find that more about that on the website. And then last week we did a HUNA Level 2, which is HUNA is divided up into multiple levels because it's such a broad range of study, not unlike Reiki and others, that it takes some levels to do it. So we had a Level 2 training, a 5-day training up at Mount Charleston here in Las Vegas. And I realized my camera bounces because I'm sitting my lap. I'm sitting the computer on my lap on a kind of a platform. And every time I get excited, I bounce my computer. So I'm going to declare as a commitment to you that I'm going to find some sort of a table or a extension so that I don't bounce around quite so much. So Joshua's here. Looks forward to this every week. And the weeks you do not have it, it is noticed. So appreciate that, Joshua. So today, and this is things. I always have lists of things that I could talk about and things of requests from people of things that they'd like me to talk about. And invariably, the things that kind of swirl around are the things that I end up talking about. So today, the question I've been getting questions a lot lately about how do I know the difference between an intuitive hit and that I'm just making it up? Like when am I just making this shit up? And it's coming up. My favorite theorist is Brian Weiss, who I studied with, who wrote Many Lives, Many Masters. And some of you know the story, and it's worth repeating. So Brian Weiss wrote a series of books in the 90s and early 2000s. The first one was called Many Lives, Many Masters, and it's a past life regression book. And I attended many of his trainings over a decade, and I ended up being a demonstration subject a number of times. And I have been regressed to now today about 650 past lives that are documented. And so this question about what's real and am I just making it up, it really happened to me. I had been going to a number of his trainings and I was really geeky about past life regression and thinking that I'd had past lives. And as I said in a previous video that was posted this week, if you aren't attracted to this idea of past lives, you may not be aware of any. The only reason past life material comes into consciousness is because you still have something to work on from that lifetime. And so if this just doesn't apply to you, I'm not going to spend the whole time talking about past lives. This is just a way of understanding that we get so much information at any given moment. When am I like, again, we do dream interpretation. We talk about dreams, and there's an idea that there's three types of dreams. The dream you have, and a lot of people don't remember their dreams at all. They just say, I don't think I dream. Research shows that everybody dreams and that dreams fall into three categories. The first is just a data dump. And the data dump usually has to do, I'm sorry, I'm finishing my sandwich that I had. Delicious Jersey Mike's sub. I am not sponsored by Jersey Mike's. I just have to, I think it's funny. People do that these days. So data dump it's a nonsensical where your unconscious mind is just trying to make sense of the dream that you had. And it doesn't tend to, it usually has to do with daily material. And usually there's no emotional charge on it. It's just kind of a random processing dream. Second kind of dream has to do usually with a prophecy or a prediction. And that came up in this week's classes a lot. I do the master class for ILS with high advanced practitioners. And they were saying, how do I know to listen to my gut? How do I know to listen to those prophetic dreams? And a couple of the students had examples where they didn't listened to them, and there were bad circumstances. And I'm not going to go into the details because I don't really have permission. But the idea is, and I do have permission with some of you, so I'll give you some of those examples in a minute. So the second dream it sends you a message, but it's a prophecy, it's a prediction. It's a warning. Don't get on that airplane. And we hear lots of stories, particularly around 9/11, where people were told, they had a dream or they somehow missed the flight. And of course, we know what happened on 9/11 when all those planes crashed. And so um, the third kind of a dream is where your unconscious mind is sending you a message. And so if you have recurring dreams that are in a pattern, take a look at what the material of the dream is and see if, in fact, there's something that warrants your attention. Now, remember, this is really important. Dreams are not literal, and so and sometimes they're just fear based, or you have an insecurity, and all that kind of thing. But you have a piece of paper or your phone. I have my phone here, and you set it to voice memo, and because you know that if you wake up, and I've been having some great dreams lately. I've been lucid dreaming, and so they've been really interesting to me. I don't know why. Maybe I'm leveling up. I can't know why. I've been teaching a lot lately. So I've been capturing some of the themes and trying to look at, for metaphorical meaning as to what the dreams may mean. Now, I do refer people to a website called dreammoods.com. That's DREAMMOODS.com. It's a very large Wikipedia like database of possible meanings for dreams. And I trust your gut more than I trust the website. And so if you're stuck, if you're kind of, doing some analysis and kind of trying to figure out what the dream might have meant, um, and at level one, we teach a dream interpretation class, and that has a worksheet. It's kind of a spreadsheet, actually. But if you get really stuck, um, go to dreammoods.com, see what it might mean for you, see what kind of some of the messages are, if that's interesting to you. So this question comes up about, how do I know what's real? And if you follow the Matrix or any of the writings in the last 30, 40 years, the idea is that it's either all real or none of it's real, and that we're living in a simulation. So I don't know about that. But the idea, I'm thinking of a friend who had a premonition dream that one of his friends was going to die in a car accident, and he saw it, and he saw it very vividly, and he saw the car, and he saw the person driving, and he saw it was a girlfriend, not a girlfriend, but a friend that was a girl in high school. And he tried to talk her out of getting into the car with this guy that she was starting to date. And sure enough, she thought he was crazy, and he was really terrified, and she got in the car, and she was killed in the car accident. And there are really many, many examples of that. And I had one in the master class that said that um, she had a weird feeling about this person's house. And she was walking by and she had a weird feeling and she didn't act on it. And she learned later that the friend's daughter had committed suicide. And what she said very clearly was, I couldn't have prevented anything. By the time I walked by the house, the person had already killed themselves, but I could have saved the family 3 hours, in terms of finding it out. And I think you get into some dangerous territory when you start second guessing yourself. The bottom line is, the question becomes, what is the difference between overthinking, rumination, paranoia, fear, excessive fear, and premonition and intuition, something that you should actually consider? A couple things. Number one, intuitive messages just come in flat, which what I mean by flat is they're usually devoid of emotion. If you've ever had a knowing, or just something you just know, you just like, you get it. Usually it comes in quickly and it comes in without any sort of emotion. It's not a fear. You're not having anxiety. You're not doing what if. You're not, doing all that kind of stuff. It just sort of comes in. You have a suspicion and noticing. And the thing that, if you watch me in my practice, whether I'm teaching a group or I'm working with individuals, I go very quickly because I know that if I let my head get in the way, I'm going to probably talk myself out of it. So I do a lot of intuitive work, a lot of psychic readings and things like that. And I am not interested in the person giving me feedback. So if you watch some of the Netflix documentaries, and I forget the names of them, but there's lots of Netflix documentaries. There's certainly Tyler Henry, who's a psychic, who's pretty amazing. Then there's a one called hmm, something about death. I forget. It's terrible, but I've forgotten the names of these documentaries. But you can search on Netflix on near death experiences and on psychic phenomena and things. These will come up. And what you'll notice, and I always laugh, and then I just saw something today about the debunking of psychics. Psychics that online, going online and they're being challenged and proven wrong. The thing about psychic phenomena is that I will say is that no one's ever 100% right. And what you're looking for are trends. So I used the kind of the joke of my client a few years ago and asked me for a reading. And I do readings and I get paid. And I said, well, there's a grandmotherly figure coming in. And I described her. And she just said, no, sorry, don't have a grandmother, never had a grandmother. That's wrong. I said, "Well, I don't know. Okay, maybe it's not a grandmother, but I'm getting an elderly female to your right, which is your mother's bloodline." And I said, "She's pretty insistent. Do you want to hear?" This was being recorded. I said, meaning the session. I was recording my sessions because I said, "I'm not attached to it, but this presence is here, and she has a lot to say. Would you? Can I continue, please?" She goes, "Yeah, take your best shot." But she was kind of rolling her eyes, like, "Sorry, doesn't apply to me." Um, I did the whole reading of this lady who's coming in. So the patient client comes back the following week and she's just in tears. And this is funny. And some of you heard this story, but it's like she's crying. I said, "What's going on?" She goes, "I owe you such a profound apology." I said, "What?" And she said, "It wasn't my grand." And she goes, "I listened to the recording. I couldn't hear it because I figured you were wrong, meaning it was wrong. There was no grandmotherly figure because I didn't have one, but it was my great aunt. I had a great aunt who was like a mentor to me, who worked in my field, who was really a role model. And that sounded like her. And she's passed, she's on the other side." She says, "So I'm so very sorry." And I got pissed. I was like, Really? You couldn't make the leap, grandmother, seriously? You're that concrete? You're that literal? And the thing about all this stuff is it is anything but concrete. It's anything but literal. And what you see about the skeptics and the debunkers is they get really nailing down to the gnat's ass about the accuracy, of anything. And I had a student, one of my I'm a big fan of Sylvia Brown. She's passed away now, but she was a noted psychic of the last century and into this century. And she didn't pass away that long ago. And I've seen her talk. And she reminds me of my mother because she smoked cigarettes. And you know what? I don't know if she smokes cigarettes. She's got a gravelly voice. She's got kind of a, "Hey, honey, how are you?" You think she's got a bourbon and a cigarette in her hand. And to be honest, I don't know if she smoked cigarettes or drank bourbon, but she had kind of a raspy, gravelly voice toward the end of her life. And it just made me feel like my mother. So I just love her. She's written a lot of books, Sylvia Brown, Browne. And, she and Deepak Chopra and James Van Prague. I forget the panel went on Larry King, which is a show that used to be on TV. And it was a whole, skeptics versus psychics kind of thing. Well, now Deepak Chopra doesn't claim to be a psychic, but he was on the show. I don't know if Brian Weiss was on the show, but there was a number of people. I know Sylvia was on, and I know Deepak was on, and I know James Van Prague was on. And of course, they had the opposing people, which were, skeptics. And, one guy just said, "Okay, Sylvia Brown, tell me what I'm thinking right now, if you're so psychic." And he was real hostile and really nasty. And she just said, "It doesn't work that way. First of all, you're hostile, you're nasty, you're not open. I can't read on the spot like that. The energy doesn't work that way." And this was probably 20 years ago or so. And I felt so bad for them, but because it was this sort of from a very Newtonian physics Western point of view. Well, if you're so, what did I have for breakfast? And tell me now. And no, it doesn't work like that. And so readings and intuitive messages are not linear. They're not literal. They're impressions. And your job around yourself, whether you're trying to read your own messages or whether you're doing it for somebody else, is what is the overarching theme or message? And if you've hung around me, I mean, my readings are super broad, super ambiguous, and I don't really care. I'm not trying to impress anybody, but people pay me for these impressions, you know. And so there's a monthly meditation that we do called Ho'oku'u, and I will call out pretty broad, ambiguous things. Now, a skeptic could say, "Well, that would apply to anybody. What you're saying could apply to anybody." It could. It could apply to many things, and I'm getting impressions now in that particular group, and I did it. It's a Huna technique, ho'oku'u, where it's a release of negative emotions. It's not really intended to be a psychic reading, but I happen to be a physical medium, and I get impressions. And so, in that meditation, I'll say to the person who's having the headache, or having the neck ache, or having the abdominal pain, or having the chest pressure tightness, because our body lights up when you're releasing negative emotions. I'll say this may mean something. Now, over the years, with thousands of repetitions, I have enough anecdotal evidence that indicates that I nail it on the head pretty much all the time. I don't need to prove anything, but understand the message is it may mean that you've just left a relationship, or that you're grieving the loss of a loved one, perhaps a pet, right? Well, that's such broad, ambiguous language because the energy is broad and ambiguous. Like great aunt, grandmother. I'm feeling an elderly female in the matrilineal side who's got a lot to say. The patient couldn't get past grandmother. Okay, it was a great aunt. A friend of mine went to a psychic many, many years ago and says, your father's going to have a heart attack. He's an older man. Da, 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 da. Well, as it turns out, it was his brother-in-law, who was an older man, had a heart attack. That's how it goes. Was it completely wrong? No. Somebody, a male figure to his right or to his left, meaning the father line, this was his sister's husband who had the heart attack. Sorry, it's not an exact science. None of it is. And if you watch the Tyler Henry or James Van Praagh or recordings of Sylvia Browne or John Edward, I think you'll get a sense of the how it works. And there's a lot of people out there that are very good. They're very capable. And there's a lot of charlatans out there. So I totally understand that. The question comes to me is that for all of you, how do you distinguish between an intuitive message and you're making it up, or it's you're thinking and that kind of thing? So number one, as I said, the messages come in flat. The feeling is flat. You're not attached to it. Your ego's not involved. It's not your opinion. Like you don't even really care about it. That's kind of important. If you get an impression and you're really nonplussed by it, right? Now, so that's number one. I'll get to a couple of other points in a second. So if you look at some of these documentaries, the psychics, and this is always funny, and I'm only slightly exaggerating. Well, I'm sensing a female presence to your right, which would be your mother. Does that mean anything to you? Does that make sense? Everyone has a mother. I'm sorry to be so jaded, but I do you have a mother that's either living or dead? Yes, my mother's passed away. There it is. Okay. Wow, I'm so psychic. You have a mother. I'm joking. I'm only slightly kidding. This is like what they'll do. Do you have a male figure, to your left, which could be, do you have a father? Does that make sense to you? And then like every 2 seconds they're going, does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? Sorry. I'm sorry. But you got to be careful. So if you're out there like paying for people to do psychic readings, look for, and again, I had a student in my psychic development coaching class last year, I think, and he said, I did some research on Sylvia Browne, and he said something like 60% of her predictions were wrong. And I thought, I bet they were. Yeah. Because a lot of psychics get roped into doing, well, they do predictions, like who's going to be president, and there's going to be an earthquake, and there's going to be weather patterns, and all that sort of thing, and that they're wrong. And I said, no psychic is right 100% of the time. And I love Sylvia Browne and a lot of her writings, and I've learned a lot from her, and I've watched some of her readings live, and it is pretty amazing. And I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, meaning I think she has value, and none of us are right all the time. It's just not. And then there's what does right mean? Because I have had people where I've done readings for them, and I'm getting an impression. And the way I do it, by the way, is I'm not asking for your agreement. I really am not. You can take the information at face value. If it means nothing to you, so be it. It's an offering. It's a gift. I am not trying to impress you. I don't do this for a living. This is not my full-time job. I'm a therapist. I happen to be pretty intuitive these days after 40 years of practice. Now, it could be argued that there is no such thing as intuition. So if number one, that the information comes in flat, number two is, how do you know it's not just your experience? And I think this is a good question. How do you know that your intuitive reads aren't just your experience? Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book a number of years ago called Blink, Blink. And he said that once someone works in a particular field of study for 10 years or more, they can size up a situation in the blink of an eye. The surgeon can come in, the realtor can come in, the teacher can come in, the therapist can come in. And I'm going to say this is also true. In mental health, I can't speak for physical health, but in mental health, there just aren't that many diagnostic categories. Sorry, it's not that complicated. They're depressed, they're anxious, they have PTSD, they have ADHD, they have schizophrenia, bipolar, substance use disorder, or personality disorders. That's pretty much it. And I'm not trying to, I mean, this is my field. I can pretty much size up the distinction between anxiety, ADHD, bipolar mania, and a tic disorder pretty quickly. And that isn't intuitive. It would look intuitive to a student, just like any physician out there, any person, you're good at what you do, you know, the master interior decorator will walk into a space and go, I know what this place needs, like that, and write up a drawing. In fact, our daughter just built a new house in Utah, a beautiful house. We met the architect, and it was the last house. Now I don't know how old he is, but he looks like he's retired. And this was the last house he did. And the contractor who was after, this was like an open house, said that this guy was a master, absolutely a master, that he walked on the land. Obviously, there was no house there. And he did pencil drawings of what he saw and of the vision. And of course, he came to see the house in its final form, and absolutely a master. Now, it could be argued that it looks magical. He was very magical, and he had a 50 or 60-year architecture history and was at the top of his game. And he was so sweet and such a great guy. And so it could be argued. So the second point about, is it intuition or am I just making it up? Make no mistake, your mastery, your facility, your competency over a long period of time can look like intuition, where you just know. You just size up a situation in the blink of an eye, right? And I work with a lot of kids, and we had a conversation in group supervision just a moment ago about, do kids have personality disorders, or do kids or teenagers have personality disorders? And I joked, I said, all teenagers are psychopaths and sociopaths and narcissistic and borderline, and just by being a teenager. And they all laughed, but it's true. It's why we don't label a teenager as having a personality disorder, because teenagers are going through a lot of changes, right? All 4-year-olds look like they have ADHD. Parents will bring their 4-year-olds to the clinic like, oh my God, fix my kid. He's got ADHD. I don't think so. He's 4. You know, wow, my 2-year-old's throwing temper tantrums. Yes, he or she is. 2-year-olds, the terrible twos. It's a thing. Doesn't mean your child needs treatment. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your child. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your parenting, by the way. And those of you parents out there know this. This is the stages of life. And it's a big difference between the stage of life and a kid throwing a temper tantrum. I said this to a class last week. I said, wouldn't it be nice some days to just throw yourself on the ground and have it wingding? Like I'll be in the airports or at Costco or something, and I'll just see a kid just lose their mind and I feel bad for the parents, but some parents are really awesome. They just go, okay, well, you do what you need to do. We're just going to hang on here, kind of thing, you know? And so it's important to understand that intuition, number one, comes in flat, and number two can be a result of your experience where you just know things. Now, the thing that I think we're talking about, though, these intuitive messages and how you know you're not making it up, is when it doesn't really have to do with you, and you just get an impression. Like the woman walking by the house of the friend who had a bad feeling, and didn't really know what it was. And then beat herself up a little bit for not intervening and found out that her daughter, the friend's daughter, had committed suicide in the house. It's bad. It's bad, bad news. But how else could it have gone? Would you have gone and broken the door down? Would you have, I mean, you look at Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, who passed away a number of weeks ago, and they were, I think, 9 days or 10 days in the house dead. I didn't really go too deeply in the situation, but people, family members could have, they were apparently pretty reclusive and didn't really reach out to people. And the only reason they got discovered was the maintenance people came by for standard maintenance on something at the house, happened to see, people on the floor and called 911. You can't know. And so understand also, number three, that intuitive messages are ambiguous and symbolic and often metaphorical in nature. They often are not literal. So if number one, they come in flat, number two, understand that it's not necessarily your competency, that they're going to have nothing to do with you. They're going to be pretty random. And number three, um, it may not have anything connected with something that you even know about. It's going to be metaphorical. It's going to be symbolic in some ways. So when I do the readings for Ho'oku'u, people, I'll say, to the people, and I'll feel a sensation in my body, to the people who are having the third chakra involvement. This may mean connection with a loved one, or loss of a spouse, or loss of a relationship, or a breakup, and I'll give 5 or 6 possibilities. Now, a skeptic would say, well, that applies to everyone. Now, what'll happen in the class is I get emails after the class saying, that was me, I just lost my partner, or that was me, my pet just died. And if you look at like a show like by John Edward or Tyler Henry, it has to do with what it means to the client. A skeptic is going to naturally debunk anything and say that it's so broad that it could apply to anyone. But if I'm getting an impression, I'm not doing it to impress somebody. I'm doing it for healing, right? Um, Recently, there was a person who had lost a loved one, and I didn't know, and I just said, and it came in very flat, so it came in flat. Um, it was an impression. It was rooted in a chakra, and I said, it feels like you've lost a loved one recently in the last couple of weeks, and understand that grieving is a normal process to go through. So just allow yourself to do the grieving process. Now, that's standard psychological fare. That's not an intuitive reading. The feeling that that person had lost someone was a hunch. It was a suspicion. But then they flipping into therapist mode and go, please allow yourself the grace to grieve, and that grieving is a normal process, and that it's a normal, natural thing to go through, and that you can't go around it. And please allow yourself and give yourself the space and time to do that. That's all psychology. So that's the other thing for me as a therapist, as a very long term therapist. I flip back and forth. I'm not a psychic reader. It's not what I do for a living. But a lot of times my readings will build on the knowledge that I've gotten, and I've seen hundreds of thousands, and I mean literally hundreds of thousands of patients at this point, between the individuals, couples, families, groups, communities, conventions, spoken to large groups. I have a lot of experience, and so it's hard to know what's my experience, what's a hunch, what's a reading, what's the sun, moon, and the stars, what's the burrito. I don't know, and I don't really care, and I'm not really trying to impress anything, because my intention when I share things around my intuition is really for healing. It's not to go on a TV show and prove anything. Um, Tyler Henry is a young man, and he connects with the people. And so it's Henry, first name Tyler. He's a young man with blonde hair. He has a number of Netflix documentaries out, and there, if you're into this stuff, it's really worth a look to kind of see how he does it. And what it does, and if you remember John Edward from, I think it was the 90s, he had a studio audience, and he would come into the room, and he would just say, okay, I'm ready to begin. I'm sensing this kind of a person, that person, kind of a person with the letter J or the letter T or the whatever. And there would be somebody in the thing. Well, yeah, it's my husband's died. His name is Tom. Now, a skeptic could say, well, that's statistically, there's going to be somebody that died, and statistically, there's going to be somebody with a T name because they'll do the numbers and say that 67% of blah 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 with the blah 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 have it. But that's not the point. That's not the intention. John Edward is picking up on someone and something, and all of the people in that studio audience are looking for answers from their dead loved ones. So John would read something, and it would be meaningful for the people who had the lost loved one. And I would look at that, and even though at that time I was a bit of a skeptic, I would say, who cares? They leave feeling better that they connected with their loved one. Now, a skeptic would say, but it's a lie. Well, we don't know if it's a lie. He would come up with very specific things, very specific things. Now, his thing was, people, the dead, the dearly departed would channel through him and often give very specific messages about the car ride or the dresser or the bedroom or and things he couldn't possibly know. Of course, there was an accusation that it was all, what's the word? It was all a hoax and that he had met with them beforehand. And that I don't believe that to be true. It's a lot of work. And for me, I'm very busy. I'm not interested in, being a hoax, and I'm not interested. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. And so, um, for those of you that get impressions, now there's a couple of things. Please don't haul off and give people unsolicited readings in public without their permission. That can be very, very destabilizing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to handle the fallout if they lose it. And it's just inappropriate. And it's happened to me. We've had people at Huna. Huna, remember, is a collection of shamanistic tools. Now, psychic reading isn't one of them. It's not like we teach psychic development at Huna. I have a class called STFU, which is basically shut the F up to listen to your intuitive messages. In fact, I'll pitch that. I'll plug that class. June 28th for 2 days in northern Idaho. We have a class coming up. So if you're interested in developing your psychic abilities and want to join that class, that's an in-person class only. It's called STFU, Manifesting Brilliance by Getting Out of Your Own Way. So if you're interested in developing your own, or you think you might be pretty psychic, that's a great class. It's available on the website, drpatrickscott.com/live events. And I've been teaching that a lot in the last few years because I come from a very Western academic background where I didn't trust anything if I couldn't see it, touch it, hold it, taste it, smell it. And now I realize there's so much that we don't see, especially now where we're just, in this thing all the time. In this thing, this is funny to me. Well, look at all the texts I have. This thing seems to be intuitive. It's so scary. I don't know if it's happened to you. I get that it listens to us. Okay, here I go. And you can do with this what you will. So I was in San Diego a couple of years ago, and I was looking at property. I eventually do want to buy property in San Diego. Um, if I could afford it. It's pretty expensive. But I was looking in Little Italy at this complex. Now, if I really was ready to buy, or I really wanted to go take a tour of the condo complex or whatever, I would have taken a picture of the sign that was whatever the realty sign was out front. But I didn't. I just saw it and I looked at it. Well, by the time I got back to where I was staying, all these ads for that building. That specific building, not just real estate ads, not just looking for property in San Diego, but it was that building. And it was creepy, and I said to one of my friends, I said, "How does it know that I was looking at that building? That's freaking me out a little bit." And they said, "It's geolocation. You have a GPS." And so the algorithms, and this, I know that to many of you this sounds like I'm so old, and I am. This is really freaky to me. So I got ads for that specific condo complex and which units were available in floor plans, which was funny because I clicked because then I could see the floor plans, something I couldn't see by just looking at the building that was not completed, by the way. And so lately, oh gosh, I've been getting Pope things, the new Pope, lots of new Pope things. And I'm wondering, it sometimes feels like Google or whoever it is, Facebook or whatever, has an intuitive awareness because I'm not even talking about things out loud and things are showing up. And I wish I had an example. I do, but it's so I don't feel that it's a violation of privacy because I really frankly like having the ads tailored to me. I do. Um, it doesn't bother me at all. And you can deselect and say, this, I'm not interested in this or I'm not seeing this. So it doesn't so much bother me. And I understand that marketing is what it is. Um, it feels more and more like Google's psychic. How does it know? And I just wish I had an example because I've had several lately of where I have not said anything to anyone. I've not Googled, because literally, if you Google something, pretty much that's fair game. You're going to get more stuff. If you buy something online, pretty soon, every day, and this kind of pisses me off. I There's a company, and this is not a pitch, but there's a company called Fabletics, Fabletics, and I've been looking for um, new sportswear, let's say shorts and sweats and things like that. And I found them. They have a store here in Las Vegas, but I've been ordering online. And they're very good at marketing because, of course, if you join the club, you get a discount and then you're a VIP and they send you free things. And then pretty soon, 5, 6 emails a day. And I had to quit because it was like I did buy some stuff. I bought wearing some socks that I really like. I bought some swim shorts that I really like. And pretty soon there's no end in sight and 5, 6, 7 emails a day. And you have unlocked a new, I get it's all marketing and I do marketing. I should look at the chat here. Natasha says I go through that too. Like, how does it know what I'm thinking? Exactly. I don't get it. Amber is here. And I'm seeing there you are, Dr. Scott Action Figure Doll. Now, I posted online, Amber, a Kumu Patrick Action Figure Doll. So if you look back on my Instagram feed, I will repost it if you want. It was an AI generated action figure doll by a student. It says the Kumu Patrick doll. And there we go. That's awesome. So the important thing is, around these esoteric studies, what I'm learning is, and I've spent decades researching, to prove certain things beyond a shadow of a doubt or statistically significant. So I've got that side going. The intuitive stuff is, I don't want to throw it out. And so I'm not going to recommend that you throw it out. I would ask you to do it responsibly. So the first criteria is ask for permission. If you're getting a hunch or a suspicion or a feeling before you know, start talking to someone, and please ask for permission. Don't just do that. And it's happened to me, and we've actually kicked students out of Hunan, Hawaii for doing readings, impromptu readings on people without permission. So ask for permission. Number two, understand that by its nature, it's going to come in flat. It's not going to have a lot of emotion. If it's paranoid and fraught with fear and fraught with a lot of emotion, that's not an intuitive reading. That's fear. That's some paranoid, suspicious kind of thing. Um, if it's a lot of thinking about it, so let's say you get the intuitive awareness, a hunch, a suspicion, a gut feeling, and then you go down the rabbit hole of the what ifs. That's not the intuitive reading anymore. That's the rabbit hole. That's the, oh my God, what does that mean? What could it mean? That's your thinking. And we default to a whole lot of thinking. I think thinking is overrated. Sorry. I try not to think. The older I get, the less I think. The more I feel, the more I know. I don't, as much as I talk, you have to understand that I'm fundamentally introverted. Um, I, I'm not that exciting personally. Uh, Last weekend we were up at our daughter's house, and my partner Rick, and we were in the car. It was a 3-hour, 4-hour drive, and at one point he goes, "This is embarrassing," but he goes, "Would you please talk to me? I'm driving. Would you please talk to me?" Okay, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. What did you think of the house? What did you think of the architect? What did you think of the dogs? Your grandkids? Anything. Okay, sorry. And he knows I talk for a living, and he knows I listen for a living. And when I'm done with you guys and I'm done talking and I'm done listening, I'm kind of done. So I don't spend my evenings talking and listening. I think that's just balance. I spend my evenings chilled out. I'm in nature. I do watch movies and videos and things, but I spend so much time talking and listening. I get bored with myself. So I I think many of you are like that. I am by my nature an introvert. I recharge alone. I don't recharge in groups. There are people who recharge in groups. They recharge with people. I know people that I've known here that will do a full day at the clinics. They'll see 8, 10 patients, and then they'll go out to happy hour with friends. And then from happy hour, they'll go to dinner with friends. And from dinner with friends, they'll go to a club for friends. And it's just that every night. I have a friend who works in I'm not, she may see this, I don't have permission to share, but she's like out in the community every single day. She works for a nonprofit and she's a mover and shaker in the community, man. And I'm astounded at how active and how social she is. She loves it. She would have it no other way. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be out there all day, with the glad hand. I couldn't be a politician, I guess. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. Yeah, I can talk, I can listen, pretty good at it. But when I want to recharge, I have a weekend coming up here. I have 3 days off. I have Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, as many of us do. I'm not going to be talking a lot. I'm not going to be listening a lot. So there's nothing bad about that. So this whole intuitive thing, I have a patient that I'm seeing. His question was, he thinks he's confusing intuitive messages for his ruminating. I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I'll get on something and I'll start chewing on it. I'll start ruminating about it and I'll start thinking. And I will talk myself into a whole paranoid scenario that's not going to exist." That's not intuition. That's paranoia. That's ruminating. And I can see now I'm annoying myself with the moving of my camera. I'm doing that intentionally. I promise you, I'm going to get a table what I can just set my computer on so that I'm not, even when I touch this damn computer, it's shaking all the time. I don't have Parkinson's. So I promise I will fix that. So no, ruminating is ruminating. It's thinking. It's overthinking, and ruminating and overthinking into fear-based what-if scenarios, catastrophizing. The sky is falling. Oh my gosh, what if this happens and what if that happens? Is not an intuitive reading. If you get an intuitive, because I asked the lady about the suicide when you walked by the house, how did the energy come in? And she said very flat, but it was a knowing. I knew something went down in there. I didn't know what. I didn't know that this girl had committed suicide, but I knew that there was a darkness there. And I felt as though I should intervene, but I didn't. And I felt guilty about that later. Be careful with this stuff. Like my friend who tried to talk his girlfriend out of not getting in the car with that other guy. She died, and he felt guilty for many years that he didn't do that. Be careful with that because there's going to be just as many people that are going to, if you go up to them, even if you know them and even if you have permission and you say, "Look, I think your grandma's going to die tomorrow," it's not helpful. It's just not helpful. If people come to you and say, "Is my grandma going to die tomorrow?" It's like, well, do I have permission? I don't know. These are dicey ethical issues. I do see things. I do see down people's timelines, and it's not uh, just because you see it doesn't mean you have to say something about it. Just because you feel it doesn't mean. But I would become pono, as we say in Hawaiian, with your own intuitive messages, what you're getting, how you're processing them, and with whom you can share. I journal every day, and I put it down there, and it's been really helpful at times because every day there's a date, there's a time, and I just write. And sometimes I will write down some of the perceptions I'm getting. Sometimes I'll write down some of the impressions that I'm getting about people and about scenarios. And then I can go back if something does happen, go, yeah, I kind of saw that. But just because I see it doesn't mean I need to say anything. Now it gets dicier around dangerous situations, you know. There are so many situations in relationships where the parents, the family, the sister doesn't have a good feeling about the new boyfriend or the new girlfriend. What do you do with that? And then the question is, well, Is it an intuition? It might be. Is it my ego? It might be. Is it that I just don't like them? It might be. Might they have been something bad in a past life? It may be. It may be a million things. And how do you say to your brother, sister, parent, child, don't date that person. I don't get a good feeling about them. That's a tough one. And there's all sorts of stories. Uh, I forget the names of shows. I watch those like America's Mysteries and Ancient Aliens and Ancient Apocalypse. And what's the one where they're like murder mysteries, but they're documentaries. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. And well, we tried to tell her he was bad news. Well, we tried to tell her she was bad news, but they didn't listen. And look what happened now. Then there's the piece about we're all on our comic path. There's a word in Hawaiian called kuleana, Kuleana. The last 48 is one. The last 41, thank you, Amber, which is they go into a crime scene of a murder and they recap the last 48 hours before the murder. And it's really interesting. It is not your responsibility to intervene in a strident karmic pattern. And this gets really hard for people to hear. Um, I don't even know how to say it, so I'm just going to say it. It's not your job to fix them. It is not your job you can warn them. Okay, look, I had cancer. I almost died. People were telling me for years that I needed to take better care of myself. I had students of mine quit because they didn't want to be like me when they grew up. I mean, I've told that story. It took me decades to figure out maybe I'd like to live longer. Maybe I should take better care of myself. Maybe I shouldn't work 20 hours a day. Maybe I shouldn't be on call all the time. Maybe I shouldn't have 5 clinics. Maybe, whatever. And I had to learn that lesson for myself, and I'd like to say, and I'm proud to say that I did the math this morning, 137 pounds I've lost now since the highest weight in the last 5 years to my lowest weight currently. I was 341 pounds at my highest weight, and I'm like 204 at my lowest weight in the last year or so. So that's 137 pounds. That's impressive. I'm impressed with myself, and I'm feeling really great. And I've come around to a level of health because, if you tell someone people don't really want your well-intentioned advice. They may even ask for it, but they're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. And that's tough. So when you have an intuitive hit, I'll give you another example. I have several adopted fostered children. There was one of them that I married. I have to be careful because I don't have permission. I'm going to keep it super vague because I don't really have permission. Um, I I was going to marry. There are 2 kids that I married, meaning I was the officiant. And one was in Hawaii. That's not the one I'm talking about. There's another one, and this woman was acting pretty crazy the 6 months prior to the wedding. Crazy enough that I just didn't feel good about it, and I told my son, my fostered son, not biological, that I will marry you. I will bless this union as an officiant, but I think you got to watch out. You really got to watch out and be very careful. Well, love is blind, and um, probably about a year ago now, I was over at their house and very successful. And he let me know that one night she lost her mind. Went crazy and tried to burn the house down, and literally lit the house on fire. And ended up going to jail and spent either 1 or 2 nights in jail. And in my back of my mind, I'm going, kind of told you so. You know, well, it's not my job. It's not my job. They're still together. They're doing great. She had a blip of psycho hose beast, and she ended up doing, a couple days in jail. Apparently, that cured her of the going so crazy. And it's not my job to protect my grown son from his relationship, even though I had a bad feeling about this. And I would say, even to this day, he would kind of look at that and remember, yep, Patrick had a bad feeling about it, still went ahead with it, still glad I married her. They're still married now. This is years ago, and it's going well. And it's not your job to prevent people from having their karmic lessons. I think that's what it is that people come to us for our well-intentioned advice. They're going to do whatever they're going to do anyway. You may have a hunch, an intuition, a foreboding. Now, if it's too fraught with negative emotion, that's your stuff. If it comes in really cleanly and neutrally, then that's something that wants your attention. You can mention it, but then you have to let it go. You cannot influence or control, well, you can influence, but you can't control another living system. And so, the last question comes up for me is, well, how do I develop that? How do I work on making the distinction of, well, what's my ego? What's my emotion? What's my, burrito? I always say, like, I ate something. What is really meditation? And I know it's it's in the public eye now. The only reason I'm more intuitive than I used to be is that I'm less in the way and I'm less attached to it and I'm listening more. And I think what happens given, our devices, I noticed a beautiful um, photograph that somebody had sent me at our level 2 workshop in Mount Charleston. And it was a rainbow, almost like an eye through, it wasn't a rainbow, and if I knew how to do it, I would show it to you. It's beautiful. It's going to show up on the website, I'm sure, because I captured it and I said, this is an eye. And then it looked like an eye on the website that Josh had captured. And I saw them side by side. And it was a graphic that Josh had put on the website that just looks like a beautiful, colorful eye. And this phenomenon, at the time we were making the offering for the level 2 class, we're making an offering to give to nature. This eye with a beautiful rainbow shone through, but not like a rainbow like this. It was like the clouds opened. It looks like the same colors of the rainbow, and then this very gentle uh, stream of the rainbow colors coming down. And I just was taken by it. And then I sent it to my team, and then Michelle, who sent me a bigger version of it. And oh, wait a minute. Yes, Jenny Joe has that. Let me see if I can put it in the chat. Nope. Can I? Maybe I can, but I don't know how. I can't. I don't know how. Can I? Okay, stand by. I'm gonna try this. You're gonna have to bear with me here, because I think it is so beautiful. And let me just see if it works. Okay. And it didn't work. And it didn't work. Anyway, I'll try to figure that out. At any rate, it's a really beautiful picture, and it is um, it's a time when we were making the offering, and I didn't notice it. And what I'm learning is that, I'm going to try it one more time. What if I copy it? Duplicate, copy. Can I paste it here? No. I don't think that more things are happening. I think that as we become so wed to these devices, we're not paying attention. And so getting out in nature and just noticing the magic of the universe and noticing things is really important. And so today I'm going through the website because we're always retooling it. And I see this eye on the website. It's on the homepage. It's just an eye, very multicolor eye. And then I recall that picture that Jenny was referring to, and I pulled them up side by side, and it's the same. And in my head, I said, that's the eye of Uli. Uli is the divine feminine energy. And that just all came in 1 second. That's the eye of Uli. I don't know. I don't know what it means, but I had goosebumps. I had shivers. It's like, wow. So are you present to your own life? Are you present to your phenomena around you? Are you listening? Are you quiet enough in here to be aware of things going on around you? Not that you have to have a lot of judgment around it or you have to take action about it, But I would encourage, if you don't have a foundational daily practice or something where you are um, meditating or getting in nature, or walking your dog or working out or something, take a look at it because I think we get, and I'm just as guilty. I'm on this device or this device. Um, it was cool at Huna Level 2. The iPad was handling the music, and the laptop was handling the slides, and the phone was handling a video recording. I was wearing my mechanical Swiss watch that's not digital, so it's like a it's like you have to wind it. It's like that kind of a watch. I and it was such a delight for 5, 6 days to not be tethered to technology. And then I got feedback from some of the students in the class that said, "We believe that the tide is gonna be turning back from telehealth, back from Zoom, back from YouTube, where people are gonna crave human connection again." Where instead of doing everything online, where people are going to want more. And this was some of the people who are on this call today. I see Sophie, I see Jenny, I see Kelly doing romper room. I see Natasha, who was at that class. And I'm excited about that. Not that I don't like this. I think it's a wonderful way for us to connect globally, but I just love the in-person experience. And a couple of them approached me, well, would you ever consider doing a retreat center or having and of course I would love to do a retreat center. And Natasha, I'm going to give Natasha some grief. Well, I could do it here. I could do it there. And she's in real estate. So she knows, I don't know the details. She knows the details. And she launched right into, well, that's expensive and that's going to be zoning. And there's like, okay, I tend to be a pie in the sky, but I love the team and I love the idea. And absolutely, I would love to teach on a more regular basis, small groups of people, this kind of thing. So, all right, that's enough, you people, today. And hang in there, have fun, get out in nature, notice what you notice, and we will talk very soon.